everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And this is so exciting. We are here for episode 2 of our On Friendship series that we just started last month. And this is where our very good friend Elisa from Best Forevers Pod is here. And we're talking about a Hallmark movie that has friendship themes. And it's really fun. And Elisa, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. You know, I love to talk, well, in general, but also to talk about friendships in Hallmark movies. This is so fun. And this movie this time, you know, there's a really important reason why I was excited about this movie, and that is the person who starred in it. So
yes. So we're actually talking about the Hallmark Hall of Fame film from 2004, back when we were grown-ups. And this is one I had not seen, so I was taking a little bit of a risk, but I just was so sure that it would be good when it's based on an Ann Tyler novel. She's a Pulitzer Prize winner. It stars an incredible cast with Blythe Danner, Faye Dunaway, Peter Fonda, Jack Palance, Ione Skye. I mean, the list goes on and on. And so I just figured, why not? And I was kind of hoping when I saw it that it would be kind of like Hallmark's version of The Big Chill, kind of, and be that kind of friendship story. And it's not really, but, and it's kind of a nutty movie. It's sort of, I would say it's sort of hit and miss in the end. But I did read I listened to the novel this week, and I think I liked the novel better, which is usually the case. But I think mainly because I will talk more about it, but Peter Fonda in this movie did you think he was just going to like murder everybody? He was
he was a little strange. And I think for me, because it's on friendship, right? And so like, you know, I was thinking, okay, so we're going to have maybe friendships later in life or, you know, something like that. And I think that part was really hit or miss, as you said, and the movie was kind of hit or miss, as we'll talk about. But I think really what it showcased with him is that he had difficulties making relationships, no matter what type of relationship it was. And he's certainly someone who could have used friends, but he was at the very least socially awkward, at the most serial killer.
And I think when I'm reading about him in the book, I'm able to kind of temper that, you know, and make him like a normal human. But
he was strange. And it was just like, you know, and everyone has their stuff, right? We all have idiosyncrasies. And so it's not a judgment per se. It's just one of the things that Hallmark movies are about relationships, right? And so it just was off-putting, I think, for me, for someone to consistently have difficulty interacting with people. Because usually you might see something where they have difficulty, there's some sort of conflict or something that sort of changes it. Maybe they hit, maybe not so rock bottom, but like a Hallmark rock bottom, you know, and then they figure their way out, you know, and he was just consistently awkward through the whole thing. It's like he learned nothing.
You're right. And they would show him as a younger person, and it was like, still serial killer. Like he's still
in the making.
Good move on her part of even though the flashbacks to her actual husband, he was also just a little creepy, but less creepy.
He was more fun.
Fun to creepy. But like, and he's like standing there outside the window, like, why are you staring at me? Like, what's going on? But because he was better than the other guy,
grass is always greener, but everyone's grass was dead.
And it wasn't really like the normal kind of on the spectrum kind of social awkwardness. It was like I don't know, it was kind of controlling and like, make sure you wear this kind of clothing. And it was just so strange. But
he seemed to me, before I forget, just unwilling to change or reflect or anything. And I think that's why I was said that he was consistently that way. Like,
Yeah, that's
never learned
true.
anything, right? And so I think that was part of the
The
issue, was
problem.
that he was unwilling to change. And in our life, there's so many ebbs and flows that we have to have the ability to reflect on our communication, our interaction with other people, what we might have contributed to a situation, how we might be able to make adjustments. Like, we don't constantly stay the same, and in some cases we might need to make bigger changes than at other times in our life. And he just was always the same person. And
Yeah.
I think that is going to lead him, if we were to talk about where he was at after the movie, I would say he's in the same spot. Like, and I would say that his daughter probably still doesn't talk to him. He's probably not remarried. Like, I just think that he is someone who absolutely has difficulty making friendships and making connections with other people, but seemed unwilling to make it
Yeah.
happen
And
in any sort of way.
if the main idea of this movie I actually do like, the idea of this person, she's 53, because this movie was made in 2004, and it
Mm-hmm.
stars Blythe Danner, and she
Can I
plays,
just pause for a
yeah,
second so I just don't repeat it over and over and over and over again? I love her so
yeah.
much. So,
I do too, and you know, my grandma just passed away a couple weeks ago, and Blythe Danner's character in this movie really reminded me a lot of my grandma. The way that she was always trying to keep everybody happy,
yeah,
and the way that she would, you know, sort of throw these theme parties, and that was something big my grandma would do. Like, she would have like Easter parties where she was really known for, and
yeah,
she would make these Easter baskets with it, like she would have everything be yellow, and
yeah,
she would make ones for the girls and one for the boys, and she'd have like a yellow like brush and a yellow for the girls, you know, and whatever. And she really enjoyed stuff like that. She she, she just was somebody that everybody adored, which was, I guess, the difference between this movie, where they don't even like her very much, it seems like.
which I didn't like. But I sure hope, like, watching it and seeing, some of your grandma in her, that hopefully watching it was
Yeah.
kind of like a little hug, if you will,
Yeah.
from grandma.
Yeah, I definitely teared up a number of times, but she was somebody who was, you know, hard on herself, that she didn't feel like she was the best mother in the world, and
Yeah.
she just tell me she didn't go to church on Mother's Day because she would feel so guilty. And
Yeah.
even though everybody adored her and she was just beloved, and so I kind of related to seeing Blythe Danner's character, and the idea is she's sort of thinking back on her life and thinking about the choices that she made when she decided to marry this man that had 3 children,
Yeah.
and this man Joe, and how she gave up some of her friendships, gave up some of her other. She didn't end up finishing school, you know, things that happened to her in her life, and so I think that part of it, that part of the conflict, I think was really good. That I liked a
Yeah.
lot.
I didn't know it was a book until you told me. And so I did kind of like some quick searches while I was watching it about like who people were, like character names, just to be sure I was following correctly, things like that.
Uh-huh.
And one of the web pages I found said that the first line of the book says, quote, "Once upon a time there was a woman who discovered she had turned into the wrong person," end quote. And
Mhm.
so I kind of took that from the book and thinking about what I was watching, and truly felt like this, where she was trying to understand how she gotten from the age of 20 to where she was at this point. And I really appreciate this idea that, I mean, some people call it like the midlife crisis, like 53, I guess 15 years ago might have been a time for midlife crisis. Like people kind of talk about that, maybe that happens when you turn 50, maybe when you turn 40, people start to have these thoughts. But it just starts to seem like, what is the point? Like, her husband has passed away in a car accident, and she's still living with his father in their house, running their business. and doing all these things for his children. And I'm saying all that because I think she's questioning all of that. And so the movie is like a journey about figuring out who she is, and did she in fact turn into quote unquote the wrong person.
Yeah, which I think is a very interesting discussion, and I think Blythe Danner does a really good job playing Rebecca, and you definitely, it's very easy to relate to that feeling, because I think everybody has sort of a fear that they are going to be forgotten, that their life isn't going to matter. I think that's a really human experience.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe partly is because we probably aren't, we probably are going to be forgotten in the grand scheme of things. I mean, I know, but
we all cry ourselves to bed tonight.
Yeah. But I mean, how many of us are George Washingtons and, these kinds of things? Like, most of us just lead these simple lives, but you still have that fear, and you at least want to be remembered by the people that you made sacrifices for, and that you want to be remembered by the people who should remember you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
And so let's talk about this family. So we have Blythe Danner playing Rebecca. Yes. And like you said, she is this party planner. She kind of inherited the job from her husband's family. This open hearts or open arms. Open arms, sorry. And it was kind of weird because some of those parties felt like, shouldn't they be doing them in the person's house? Like, if I was gonna have a graduation party, like, it was really cute, but I wouldn't want to go to another house.
Yeah,
that was weird. Like, the wedding made sense because you have weddings at venues, but
and there was also like an engagement party. It was like a picnic that seemed fine, like a different cute idea. But and I was like, well, they got to keep it. This is the house they have. This is where they're filming.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. But
anyway, everything takes place here except the dinner and the picnic.
Yeah. And so she married Joe, and who we see in flashback only, and when she was in her early 20s, and she had been dating Will,
by Peter Fonda,
and as an older man, and she chose to be with Joe instead of to be with Will. And Joe had 3 daughters, so she has 1 daughter, and it's the names. I can't deal with these names. Anyone listening, I apologize if you have these names, but I just can't understand why a white woman with brown hair is named Min Fu. It really was like, what?
Yeah,
I don't know.
There was some questionable choices in naming. Maybe it happened in the 60s and 70s, and as I've heard, that was a time where people made choices under influence, perhaps. I don't know.
Because you had Min Fu, you had No,
which for the first 5 minutes I thought was Nona, and I was like, that's okay. And then I was like, no, her name is literally No.
Like, they sound like names that you give like a toddler, but then like once you're an established adult, you need to kind of have a real name. Like,
so Patch is not an adult name.
No. And then there's Patch, and then there's Biddy, which I guess is the most normal of.
I don't want to say normal, most common name, something that you've heard of before.
Right. And I was just like, what is going on with these names? I hated the names. I mean, and we have some different names in my family. Like, my niece's name's Sparrow. Yeah. So I don't have any problem with creative names, but I don't know. Just like I said, these were just.
It was.
I don't know.
Interesting.
I felt like Ann Tyler. Like, what were you doing? Were you like picking words out of a jar or something. Like, what is going on with
Was
these
there
names?
any discussion in the book about the names?
No, not really. I can't remember how they ended up with Minfu. I can't remember, but
Yeah.
yeah. So
That's not typically not what you would expect. We'll just say
yeah,
that.
there you go. So basically, these different daughters so Nono, so Nono is getting married at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of the movie to a man named Barry, and Barry has a son named Peter, and I thought that the relationship between Rebecca and Peter was one of the sweeter
Yes, I thought that was
relationships.
really cool relationship.
Yeah, because uh he, sort of resentful about having a new stepmom, and obviously that's something that she can relate to. And
Yeah.
this No is such a she was kind of the worst. I mean, she was so selfish. I
Yeah.
mean, she's complaining after being married for about a month or two, and she's like, you would have no idea what it's like to be investing all of your energy into a child that's not even your own. She says something like that, and
You're like, hello.
like, what is wrong with you? Like, she
Yeah.
literally raised 3 children that were her own. What?
I'm like, think about your audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she's getting married, and then Minfu is pregnant. This is her.
Oh, and I discovered, I brought up IMDb again. Her Min is short for Minerva.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
I don't
short
know
for
where the
something.
foo came from.
A married name, perhaps?
Yeah, because she had 3 husbands, so maybe
Yeah.
because she has one child that's black and one child that's white, and now
A
she
baby on the way.
yeah, and now she has a baby on the way with a man named Hakeem, and
Mm-hmm.
she ends up naming the baby Abdul.
Mm-hmm.
And they seemed all fine with all of that, which was cool. Like,
Yeah.
there wasn't any part of the plot. Like, they were more concerned about the fact that she'd been married 3 times than the fact that she
Yes.
different races. That was not a
Yeah.
part of the plot, so that was
No,
cool.
and I don't think they spent a lot of time on that. I thought there was other things where I was like, "Whoa, 2004, we were gonna do that? Okay, we're gonna say that? No, we're not
Yeah.
gonna say that."
Yeah.
There are a couple parts where I was like, "Ugh," but they all came from Peter Fonda's character.
Yeah, there was
So,
yeah, so then there's Biddy,
Mhm.
who is a chef, kind of, maybe.
I'm not really
I don't
sure.
know. It was weird. She was always cooking weird
Yeah.
stuff.
They all
And
seem
like
way too close
snails.
to each other too. Like it was hard to distinguish between the sisters.
Yeah, they did look quite a bit alike. And then there was a weird thing about her husband being gay. That was weird.
Yeah, they never really explained that.
Yeah, she was like, Troy's gay, but we still get along just great. I'm like, what?
Super.
Uh,
Yeah, I know. I kind of was like, did I miss something?
like, what?
I thought I missed something like really important, and maybe we did. Maybe it was lost in translation of some sort.
It was the early 2000s, a different time,
Yeah, I guess so.
I guess.
Or everyone
But
had a gay husband.
yeah,
I don't really know what that was about.
probably
It was very
not.
trendy in 2004, apparently.
Definitely. Yeah. Whew. But yeah, I really kind of hated all of these women. They were
Yeah.
just so selfish and
Mhm.
so ugh,
And
the
the thing
worst.
about it was that they were adults, right? So
Yeah.
these are folks who are getting married, they're having children, they have jobs which seem to be tied into the open arms business. And so like the Blythe Danner's character Rebecca had been around for decades at this point. Like as longer than those adult children it seemed, or like at least it's soon into their life, right?
Yeah. I mean, they
And
looked like they were certainly all under 10 years old for sure.
yeah, when
Yeah.
she married Joe. And so it's like I would expect Peter, who was a child, right? His new mom is going to be no after the marriage, right? And so
Mhm.
like Peter is what, 10 years old? So kind of like the same, I mean, it's supposed to be parallel, I think, or at least that's how it came across to me.
Mhm.
And I would expect Peter to be disinterested in his new mom or having difficulties with that. But this lady's been around you for decades and you treat her like she's just like an annoyance. Like
Yeah.
they
Like,
were so disrespectful to her, in my opinion. Like they didn't want to do family stuff that she had planned, like an engagement party. They didn't made fun of her because she often, like, it's a party planning business, and so it seems like the family did a lot of toasting, and so
right.
they'd like make fun of her toast and things like that. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my god, like that seems to be something that's like a tradition, and they had photos of it. And although Will, played by Peter Fonda, thought it was kind of strange, it's one of those things where I was like, that's kind of a cool family tradition that
Right.
you would miss if Rebecca was no longer there. But they acted like maybe they're just taking her for granted. But at the same time, I would expect them to have already gone through those feelings of not being interested in their stepmom and getting beyond it. Like you're 30 something, you're 40, like get over it. I don't, it's not like they
Yeah.
have continuous conflict.
I
Like they
mean,
just need to be fighting.
she would be the major parent that they would even remember. Let's be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
how much do you remember of what happened before you were 10? Like, we really don't. I mean, they would have memories
A few
of,
things here and there, but like,
yeah.
yeah, it's like moments or birthdays or it's because of photos, things like that.
And especially with them having like rocky relationships, you think that they would be way more sort of empathetic and understanding. And yeah, it's like when the Von Trapp kids were bratty, but like they never grew out of it. Like what?
Yeah.
And
Even Peter, the 10-year-old, grew faster. He grew like almost the most in this whole movie, and he's a child. He is a minor. He's
right.
not even a tween yet.
Right. Like towards the end, like you're saying with the toast, she
Yeah.
does a sweet toast to Poppy, the Jack Palance character,
Yeah.
and Patch says another one of those everlasting rhymes of hers.
And it's
Like,
like,
what is wrong with you?
and also it's like, people can hear you. Talk smack about it later, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe just be like, if she didn't do the toaster, you're gonna be like, well, and then she didn't do anything for Poppy at his birthday. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like, be appreciative for the people. It doesn't seem like, from what I gather from the movie, Rebecca was trying to figure out how she gotten from 20 years old to where she is now. But she did seem to maybe have some moments that we saw in flashbacks. But in general, it didn't seem like they had any true beef with each other than maybe growing pains of
Yeah.
a new mother. And Faye Dunaway, who's their biological mother in this movie, maybe doesn't exactly help situation. Like they call Faye Dunaway mother, but like they don't sort of address Blythe Danner as their stepmom in any certain way. They seem much more excited to see Faye Dunaway and get gifts and all this kind of stuff. And then sort of the gift, what does she gets Blythe Danner an apron, and she's wearing an apron, and it's like, hey, cool, an apron. She goes, wanted to get you something practical. Like she has nothing in her life besides running this family's business, and
Beyond
she's
practical. Yeah.
married into this business, and
Yeah.
her husband has passed away.
Well, yeah.
Oh
So
my gosh.
let's talk about let's talk about the Faye Dunaway character. There is a kind of a grand tradition of Hallmark movies where they advertise famous people that are just in the movie for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Was that Faye Dunaway?
yeah, so Faye Dunaway would be an example here of this. And she comes in, she's the mother of the 3 girls, and I think it's Min Fu, the one that's actually Rebecca's daughter, calls Faye Dunaway character mother, and her companion is like, that's not your mother. Like, it was so awkward.
And Faye Dunaway's like, I've always thought of you as a 4th daughter. And then Blythe Danner's like, why am I even here?
Yeah.
My own child is even my own child.
Oh, and it's like, well, yeah, I guess some people are fast and loose with the whole mother name. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not married. So like,
Either am I.
yeah. And so, but I've always thought it was really awkward when people call their mother-in-law
Yeah.
their mom. I don't know. I know a lot of
Sometimes
people
I
do it,
think
and a lot of people listening are like, "Oh, I totally do that," and that's total, and maybe I will if I ever get married. But it's
I think
always
it's
just
more
sort of been like,
natural for some people, like
yeah,
especially if you have good relationships. But if it feels like kind of a chilly connection and being like, "Hi, Dad," and you're like, "Ah," but like for some people, it's much more natural. They have a
yeah,
great relationship, those sorts of things. So,
yeah,
and it's and the thing about it is, people listening probably all started when it felt right or when they were asked to, or like, no, don't call me Carol, call me, whatever. um
hmm,
so it probably all happens
yeah,
naturally and organically in that relationship somehow. But yeah, I can imagine, like, I've observed as a third person watching people call like mother and father-in-laws mom and dad and stuff like that, and it can be kind of awkward.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you ever like in your communications classes things? What do you think are like the special dynamics with blended families that make things challenging?
Well, I think there's these feelings of like, you're not actually my mom or not actually my dad. And so trying to step in when they do have both their biological or their caregivers, their parents, whoever they might be to them, that if there is some sort of separation and then you have step family, it's like for the child, it's really difficult because you have, if wherever Faye Dunaway is, they're going to her house and then they're going to their dad's house. So there's a lot of things, and you have to like create in some ways a new family dynamic with blended families. And that can be pretty challenging because based on the age of the kids, how the relationship started, and how, where people stand, where the other parent feels about everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, I think there's a lot of moving parts, and I think that there are a lot of parents who do the absolute best they can and are really doing a bang up job in the sense of like talking about it, working together. But that's going to be really difficult because it's also like you're stepping in, and there's so many. One of the things I do appreciate is that there's so many. Okay, this is when like social media is really good. When people post videos, and I just saw it for like Father's Day, where a stepfather is, the Father's Day gift is wanting to be adopted by him. Like that stuff is so wonderful
mm-hmm.
because that person has stepped into a role that perhaps they didn't have and didn't feel that love, and it's amazing. And so those are people who are doing it right, but it is super challenging. We could talk about so many topics, but it's going to be very difficult. And a lot of times I think people can feel like they're not involved or they don't have a say because I'm not actually their mom or dad.
Yeah.
um
Well, I mean, and in fairness, every family has challenges.
yeah,
And
for sure.
so so many of them do it and do it well. I just feel bad particularly for stepmoms because they get the raw end of the deal as far as media. Like they're
Yeah.
always portrayed as like,
Oh yeah, like have you seen a Disney movie
yeah,
like the evil stepmom? I
yeah,
mean, you
fairy
don't have to go
tales.
any further than Cinderella to be like, well, shoot.
Yeah, and so you gotta love Sound of Music because it's like
Oh
the
geez, that
perfect
too.
step. Or I guess there's that movie with Julia Roberts and
Mhm.
Susan Sarandon. That one's pretty
Yep.
good.
Yeah, I
Or
enjoyed that movie, but yeah, I think that it shows so many challenges, and in that case, spoiler alert, Susan Sarandon becomes sick, and so
yeah,
she starts to realize that this is the person who will be in their kids' lives, and so working together to make that happen. But typically what's happening is that parents might get divorced or separated, and then they remarry or they have other relationships, and so then you're managing different locations, perhaps multiple layers of children and things like that. And, it's just, I think, like you made a good point, like every family has a challenge, and it's not to say that families that are intact is, I think the academic term is because I don't want to use normal because I don't think that's appropriate, but I think
Sure.
intact means like the original couple is married, and the children are all together. And I just think that no matter what, it's really important to talk about what the expectations are. Like, even if you get married and you decide to have children together, you still want to talk about how you're going to raise those kids. It doesn't matter if it's a blended family or not. There are certain things that you have to talk about to be more successful in that family. So.
Yeah, I agree. And the one thing I think this movie does show very well is just sort of the messiness of family that I
Yes.
definitely connect with. That it's hard, like especially when you have a bunch of strong-willed people that all have strong opinions about things and the way they like things, and
Yeah.
sort of balancing that all out and making everybody happy, and is a tough challenge that I think I know a lot of families deal with, and making sure everyone's heard, and
Yeah.
it's tough. It's challenging.
Well, I also think this family in particular, everything has been precisely the same for a very long time.
Yeah.
Like, that business has been there. Everyone has sort of contributed to the Poppy, his dad, Joe's dad, who, has outlived his son because Joe died in a car accident. He's 100 and he still lives in the house, and he's very particular about the things. And in some cases, I think that might showcase that sometimes we might need to change it up a little bit. Doesn't mean change everything, but we might need to do something a little different to sort of shake it up, because if not, if we're in a rut, we're always doing the same thing over and over again. It's no wonder that Rebecca was wondering, like, is this where I'm supposed to be? That's when we start having those sorts of questions, I think. And also, it's just like we don't take things, we'll continue to take things for granted if it's always exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah, they did. I just wanted anybody in the movie to say thank you to Rebecca
I
for,
know.
not everyone took her for granted except for Zeb. Zeb was like the shining star. He
And
was
that was
like
Joe's
like
brother, right?
yeah, Joe's brother. And like, didn't you want them to get together? I
Yeah,
so
I
wanted
actually
them to get
thought, I was
together.
like, is this the romance? Because there was gonna, I thought there might be something in it, and yeah, that was actually kind of disappointing. Like, hey, or like, who was the guy who did all of like the landscape guy? I was like, he seems pretty cool too.
But he was so young.
The
The
landscape guy, he was balding. He can't have been that
oh,
young.
maybe I'm thinking of I'm thinking of the plumber guy.
Okay, yeah, she had multiple people coming to like help around the house and that sort of thing. But there was one guy who I felt was kind of like did a lot of stuff, but she talked to him about the high school sweetheart, who's Will, played by Peter Fonda,
Yeah.
and so that's like the thing. She's like, she gets to the point where she thinks she's this wrong person, or like, how did I get here? That she's going to ask questions of her high school sweetheart, and that's where we get the trouble of Peter Fonda.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna just believe to myself that like eventually they end up, Zeb and
Yeah,
Rebecca
like,
end up together because
yeah.
they had chemistry. I thought the actors had chemistry. I mean, she talks to him seemingly every single night. She talks to him.
He seemed to be truly her best friend in the
Yeah.
entire movie.
And he
And
seemed to be the only one that noticed her or said thank you or cared about her at all, aside from maybe
or when
Peter.
she starts to feel like she's being erased and won't be remembered, kind of like you were talking about before, I feel like he's the one who's like, no, you're important to us. You belong here,
Yeah.
those sorts of things. Like, he's the one that seems to have his finger on the pulse, so to speak, of understanding Blythe Danner,
Mm.
um, and just everything that's going on and what might be needed in that situation. He just seems like he's a caring guy, and he cares about this person because she's been part of his life for so long, and is can appreciate everything she's done, but also is a really good communicator in the sense of he knows when to say things and sort of the right things to say to make her feel better.
Yeah.
And that is someone who's good at social support. We're not always good at social support because I think that we're very particular individually, and unless we can tell someone precisely what we want, that person might never be very good at social support. And maybe Rebecca never indicated what she might need to feel supported, but he certainly understands that, and that is very rare.
Yeah. I loved Zeb. He was the best. And he kind of reminded me of, maybe not quite as funny, but he kind of reminded me a little bit of Billy Crystal's character in When Harry Met Sally.
Oh yeah,
Those two
I mean,
characters.
Billy Crystal's got that comedian edge, but I get your point. Yeah, totally.
But just the way, because they spent so much time talking on the phone in When Harry Met Sally, and that's
Oh
definitely
yeah,
a lot of this dynamic is them talking on the phone, and him him kind of giving advice, and her, sort of venting a little bit to him. And
I think the social support that he reflects best is the emotional support, because he listens to her. I would say the esteem/ego support, because he makes her feel good about the decisions that she makes, and then any informational support, so any advice he gives.
mm-hmm.
So I would say he's probably best at emotional and esteem, and then probably as like a secondary information. So, but he did it well.
Yeah.
And that's what social support is about. You want to feel supported, and most of us are considering how we think we want to get social support, so that's what we have to provide to the other person.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not right. We need to think about the type of social support that person needs that we can give them, and we might not be able to give them the type of social support they need. And that might be part of the problem, is that none of the kids or Poppy or Will know how to provide social support to Rebecca.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say is that just by and far, like, Zeb is, I would say, her closest friend. And she even mentions that, like, what happened to the friends that I had? She spent so much time focused on Joe and those kids that she missed out on having relationships, friendships. And I think that's what's critical, is something to pull out of this as terms as a friendship theme, is that our partners are important, our family and our kids are important, but it's also important to have friendships, because when the kids grow up and they move away and they start building their own families and things like that, or as we age and our partners pass away, friendship is always something that we need in life. And so to me, it's like throwing it completely aside once you get married or once you have kids, I think might be a choice that could later have consequences. Maybe it won't, but I think it's one of those things that we always want to maintain our friendships, or to continue looking for friendships. And Zeb mentions, she's like, I don't really have any friends. And he's like, I'm a friend. And he's like, you have Puppy. He kind of mentions, like, she's like, relatives aren't friends. And he says, relatives can be friends too. Yeah. And I think that's true. Siblings can be friends. I think at certain point, parents and children can be friends. But it's also a different type. It's a blended friendship. You have family and friendship together. And I think that Rebecca's character could truly benefit from having friends that don't have anything to do with the business, open arms, and have nothing to do with the children or anything.
Yeah, that is
one side of the family that she feels like she's not a member of at times.
Yeah, that is one difference between my grandma. I mean, there's lots of differences, but and this Rebecca's character is, my grandma made friends wherever she went.
Yeah,
and she had one of her best friends was the lady who did her hair every couple weeks. They went on trips together. This lady, her name's Jerry, and she would come. Yeah, Jerry for years. She would drive all the way from the Bay Area, from Walnut Creek, all the way in California, all the way to the Sacramento area, which is a couple of hours, and to do my grandma's hair for years. That's awesome. And my grandma also just became so close to her daughter-in-laws, and and to her, her daughter. But she would make friends everywhere she went. She had kind of her morning routine, and she became friends with everybody kind of on the routine. She would get her big gulp. She would, do things. And there were just so many people like that. I remember when she had a best friend from growing up that they lived together. They lived on the same street for a while, as far as I understand. They worked for our family company named Doris, and my grandma was so diligent when Doris got sick of just every doctor's appointment, she's got to help Doris. And so my grandma was an amazing friend, and she had me amazing friends. And so, but it is kind of easy, I think, to not make that a priority. And I definitely felt it as somebody who has mostly, married friends, and it's just so challenging to get together, because not only do you have just such different lives, but your like the practicality of your schedules is so different, and it's convenient for me to get together in the evenings, on the weekends. That's when it's the most busy for them, and it can be very difficult to make everything work and to get together. And you just try your hardest to do that, but I don't know, it's a challenge. Like, being friendships as adults is hard.
Yeah, it's hard. And the thing is, that might be assuming going into a friend getting married or having kids that you're already friends with them. So it's challenging to manage that when your life is different than what your friends are now going through, right? So I've been friends with, let's say, my best friend Kate since we were in high school, and so she's married and has been for, I think, at least 10 years. I would have to look at a calendar. Sorry. I'm like, what year is it? When did she get married? But yeah, so like 10 years, and then they have a kid. And so her life, I've been a part of it all along. And so the one really cool thing about Kate is that, it is challenging to be married, and it's challenging to have kids. It's challenging to have a kid with special needs. And there's still that ability to work with her husband, with her schedule, with her mother, maybe taking the child for some time so that she can have one-on-one time with her husband, but also be able to spend some time with her friends. But that might be different than now, where if I make a friend with someone who is about to get married or have a baby, that might be completely different. But nonetheless, there are challenges. And so you're exactly right. Schedules are different. And even if it's like, this is what I tell people, okay, even if you're like, okay, I can make a time for an afternoon for us to figure out what our schedule is going to be, right? Like one afternoon to figure out, maybe it won't take long. Maybe it'll take 5 minutes, maybe it'll take an hour, but figuring out schedules. And if the one thing that you have in common, for example, is that you go to the coffee shop to get coffee on the way to work, or something like that, and you can swing at the same time, even if you stand in line for 5 to 10 minutes, get your coffee, talk for a few minutes, you're still checking in with each other. Or if it's like, I have a break at the time that you take lunch, or that sort of thing, even being able to text for a little bit. And I have a friend who commutes over an hour, and that's when she's like, on this day I talk to this friend, and on this day I talk to this friend. And so she does the hands-free talking on the phone while she's commuting. And I'm like, genius, right? And it's just one of those things where I think, we have to be more creative, but I think it's important. And it's not saying you have to have 57 different friends and a partner and kids and then, because there's so much going on. Sometimes I'm like, I don't have kids or a partner. Sometimes I think I look at what people have to do. They post on Facebook, and I'm like, I don't know how you do that. Like, how do you make all the cupcakes for the class, and you have this thing for that kid, and you have this made for that dinner, and this thing for that? Like, I'm in awe.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's a wonder I can clothe, feed, and get myself together, and 2 cats.
Yeah, but honestly,
we can find some friend time. We have to.
Yeah, my most friend interaction these days is honestly probably with the podcast. I mean, people like yourself, people like people, Lisa and Casey and Caroline and obviously Amber, that I'm very good friends with, and we really got to know each other. But then also I have like my friend Jen, who's kind of my movie buddy. And she goes to a lot of the screenings with me, and we have so much fun with that. Then there's friends that we just make it work one way or another. My friend, actually, I have a really good friend named Rachel, who she has 3 children now. And we did a book club for years with my cousin Danielle, who I'm very good friends with, very close with. And so every couple of months we try to have a little brunch where the 3 of us will have brunch together. And because Danielle has, she has 2 children, and so it's challenging, but that's what we've been able to make work. And that seems to be enough of a connection to kind of keep everything. Obviously I'm connected to my cousin, but it's one thing to be connected and to be a friend.
Yeah.
But that seems to be enough to kind of keep things going. But and I, then I have a couple other friends at church, a couple other things, that I'm able to feel supported enough in my life. And but it can be difficult. It can be hard. And I don't know. I just, in some ways, I felt like especially these 3 adult women were kind of unrealistically cold. Like I just can't imagine, especially people that had been through multiple relationships. Most of them, it seemed like, had been married several times, had been through things that I can't imagine being so clueless and so callous. And
I want to be like, give me a reason. Like, what does she do to you, at least in your eyes? Is it just simply she's not Tina, she's not my mom? Because, like, that's for 8-year-olds, not for 20, 38, or 48-year-olds.
Yeah. Like I said, the Von Trapps grew up. They grew out of it. Like, they moved on.
I mean, Peter, again, the 10-year-old was like the most open and growing person there was. And I just thought their friendship was great. He invited Rebecca to like their grandparents' day, and she went, even though she wasn't. He goes, "I know you're not actually my grandma," and I was just like, "This is the stuff that makes the difference, right?" Like, he had a connection with her. She tried so hard to like do things with him when he was over, and feed him, and like, let's do an activity, let's play Scrabble. And they talked and they connected. And it seemed like none of the adult children were willing to talk and connect with other people. They saw everyone as a nuisance.
I agree.
I was just like, other people are not a nuisance. Like, okay, we have annoying people in our life, don't get me wrong. I mean, we've stopped talking about Will, but probably because he's that annoying person.
There were other parts of the movie that seemed like I kind of wondered if the director was going to go a certain way and then decided not, but there were still sort of remnants of that other way. Like, for instance, when Nono is getting married, they announced that the one of their waiters is going to be doing the ceremony, and then there was this weird like alternate reality thing with the waitress being weird. But then once it came to the actual wedding, it was like perfectly fine.
Yeah, you're like, who's this person?
That felt like nowhere else in the movie do we get this weird kind of, I don't know, like, I don't know what to call that, sort of this alternate reality kind of like,
it's like she had like a
almost
dream vision about like the officiant being like a waitress or something. Like,
it was, can I take your order, please?
Instead of like the vows during the wedding.
And so it's after the wedding that she finally decides to call Will. And she has the conversation, I think it is with Zeb actually, and she says, if you were offered a trip on a time machine, would you take it? And it would be the future or the past? And she says, absolutely the future, because I want to know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Elisa? Would you, if you had a chance to go on a time machine, would you take it? And would you go forward or would you go back?
Oh my goodness. Like, I feel like Okay, I guess with a condition, like, so if I take a time machine, that means I'm coming back to the present
Yeah,
day.
eventually, yeah. So
Okay.
you won't be stuck in the space-time continuum.
Because I feel like in some ways she's like, I want the future because I want to know what happens. But then she goes to visit the past, who is Will, and that was problematic. But I just think
Mhm.
about like some special people in my life that are no longer with us, and
Yeah.
to be able to go in the past and spend that time knowing that I still have this opportunity in the future to maintain and make other friendships. I think I would go in the past.
Yeah. I mean, I always said I would go in the past just because in any episode of Doctor Who, going in the past is way better than going forward.
Well, I just like I don't want
The
to go
future
to the
dystopians are
future.
always terrible.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to go into the future and realize that I am going to be living in fear for, I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people already are, right? Like, I don't want to go in the future and then come back and be like, it was awful,
I mean,
right?
I guess you could
If
try to
I come
kind of help
back from
make
the
that
past,
not happen, but
yeah. But if I go to the past and it was awful, I'll be like, good thing that's over.
right, yeah. I mean, you
The
have to make
future,
sure.
I have to wait for that to happen, and
Yeah.
yikes.
Yeah, I would definitely go in the past, like, and what you say as well about seeing people that you miss that are
Yeah.
gone. She gets ready for the date. She goes on the date with Will,
Ah,
and he's just odd from the very beginning.
first
I guess
sight.
he has been divorced, and he's just strange. He's a strange man. And we find out on the first date with Will, we find out that she lost Joe when she was only 26.
Yeah, so early on in their marriage.
Yeah. And according to her, the girls had just adjusted to her existing in the family, which
And
is,
then,
again, a little surprising for kids that age, 6
yeah.
years. But
Well, I mean, if they're going through tweenhood slash teenage years, I mean, anything can happen during
I
that
guess.
time.
Uh,
Again, they didn't grow up. They're the Von Tramps who didn't grow up.
well, the
But
other thing that seemed crazy to me about Will is that he was still bitter. He was like, I
yeah.
trusted you. How dare you? What you did to me back in college. What?
Well, they were high school sweethearts. Someone get me the stats immediately on how many high school sweethearts stay together. I know there are many of you out there, and
Yeah. My best friend in high
amazing.
school is still with her high school sweetheart. So
Amazing, but I think the stats don't support it.
I mean, to be bitter that it
Yeah.
didn't work out, like, I totally was like, yeah, she should leave here because she might get murdered. And like,
Yeah.
he's just so weird. It was just a,
I had a couple thoughts about him. One, I was kind of surprised that he was a doctor. I don't think we learn what kind of doctor he is. He has a white coat on at some point, so it's like,
yeah,
okay. Um, and I mean, bedside manner would be absolutely horrendous. So
yeah,
if he's in practice for himself, is he at a hospital? I had like many questions about that
that's true.
because I thought he was a little too like I mean, there's lots of doctors that don't have good bedside manner. We talk about this a lot in communication. Like there's lots of things that doctors could do to enhance their ability to communicate with their patients and to listen and things like that. There's lots of great doctors out there. There's other ones that could probably take some of those tips. He didn't seem like he would ever take tips nor learn from them or try to get better, that he is stuck from whatever age he was, 19, 20, and he's never grown past that.
Yeah.
And
And
um
he says, he claims that, oh, I hit rock bottom when you called. So I guess there was this divorce was really brutal on him, but
yeah,
I don't know. I just felt like
because
it
I
was
think he
weird.
says at a dinner with Rebecca that at just one point the wife came home and said, I want you gone. He has a teenage daughter who's very emo, very like, I hate everyone including my dad, and I only do things if you get me cell phones. And so like she doesn't get along with him. His wife is gone. He's hit rock bottom. This person that apparently he never got over calls. And it's like someone's like, oh, this is great if you fell in love again or something like that. And she's like, well, I think we've fallen in fondness. And so I don't think she ever saw Will as anything more than trying to understand where her life got to where it was,
Yeah.
and to see him as friends. And then like he tries to kiss her and things like that.
So awkward.
It is. But then she kind of says, like, I don't think I'm going to see you again or in the future or anything like that. And he's like, well, here you go again. This is what you did last time. And so I feel like he was, she needed Will to learn about who she was. And that's unfortunate for Will.
Well,
Very
and by
much
the end
so.
of the
But
movie,
I feel like she learned a lot about herself
yeah.
because of him when
Well,
she
by
was
the end of the
20
movie,
and 53.
yeah, she's like accepted, kind of, she's turned into the person that she was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's what she kind of learns. You're right about the experience with Will. She kind of realizes that, oh yeah, I made the right choice. Joe was the one. Joe was the right choice.
Or that she's fine where she is. And I kind of see it, because again, that quote said, once upon a time, there was a woman who discovered she had turned into the wrong person. Now, you listen to the book. I haven't yet. But I kind of felt like this entire movie then ended up being a journey for Rebecca and being okay with where she was, maybe becoming her own friend and being supportive of herself and what she's done and the things that the people she's surrounded with.
Yeah.
And that sometimes we just have to be okay with who we are. And I think Zev says to her, don't do what you want to do, be who you want to be. And I think she realized she was that person, perhaps, that like sometimes you can't go back. Like she chose Joe, and this is her family and this is the thing she's doing, but there's still good things here, you know, and that we can all be appreciative of sort of our journey and who we are. And again, her daughters could be a little less chilly to her.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Like, are there any moments where they've ever been, maybe they're just not sentimental folks. That could also be the case. And like, I guess no judgment there, but some people need that.
I mean, I don't know. There's being sentimental and just being mean. I feel like you should treat the people in your life. Not that you should baby and coddle people, but you should just say thank you. Like, you don't have to be ooey gooey about it. Just say thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah. Thank
that
you
was
for
nice of you.
my engagement picnic.
Thank you.
Thank you for planning my wedding. Thank you for my mom when my dad passed away 5 or 6 years into your marriage. Like, I mean, good gravy.
Yeah. Well, I did like the way in this movie that it, like I said, I like kind of the messiness of family life. And for instance, so they have this baby welcoming party, which is kind of explained more in the book.
Okay.
That when she had her, child, that,
the baby Abdul.
Yeah.
Abdul was welcomed into the world.
Yeah. And so, but they started this whole tradition back when Rebecca had the child, that of this baby welcoming kind of party that they would throw. And because they're a party planning, company and whatever. And anyway, but it's interrupted by Poppy getting sick and by the one of the little kids getting stung by a bee. And so there's all this kind of drama, and that all feels very real, because that's just the way big families are. It's the way that just nothing can go perfect. One of my favorite, I love the movie While You Were Sleeping. One of my favorite lines in that movie is when father and son are talking, and he says, the dad says, you have those moments where everyone is happy and everybody's, he's kind of waxing, and I just love, he says, Dad, this is not that moment. Like, oh no.
Because I even wrote that, like, she has Will over for like a dinner.
Yes.
And everything's like chaotic, right? And so like people are coming in and like the phone is ringing off the hook and there's the men coming in to fix the backyard or whatever. Like, it's just like life. Like, these things are always happening. And so do you ever just want a day where everything seems to go your way, but instead it's like, oh, we had a storm and the basement's flooded, so now we have to have these people over, and then I get in the car to go to the store, and then this thing happens, and then this kid gets an ear infection. It's just like, it's like watching life as it exists. And I think you're exactly right. I think that is really a highlight of this movie. And I think the other highlight is, I mean, Blythe Danner, always and forever.
Yeah.
But I feel like her journey, like, we have to be okay with ourselves first before other people are going to be okay with us, I think.
Mhm.
So, like, what do they say? It's so cheesy. You got to love yourself before other people will love you. But, I mean,
It's true.
it's cheesy, but there's some truth to it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we have to figure things out. We have to figure out where our space is, where our place is, who our people are. And I just like the line that Zeb, be what you want to be.
Yeah. He
Not,
says, you're fine the way you are.
yeah.
Yeah.
But,
And I did think it was interesting too when she says, when I was young, I wanted somebody other. And that's why I was drawn to Joe. Now I think the idea of being drawn to someone different is exhausting. And that totally makes sense because she's with all these people all the time that are different, that are like mean and horrible.
yeah.
And
But there are some people who are always, no matter what relationship they're in, might always be like, well, the grass would be greener over there. And then when you get on that grass and you're like, oh, the grass might be greener over there. So maybe if Joe, you know, it could very well be if she was still married to Joe and this movie existed, would she be questioning whether or not she should be married to him? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Or if they were divorced and she was starting a new relationship, would she be wondering about whether or not she should be back with Joe? Like, there might just, I think there is this human nature of like, the grass is always greener. It's like, no, here's the thing, people, we should be watering and tending to our own grass. Because those are the things, solving problems and communicating in our own relationships is what's going to make that work, right?
Yeah.
Unless it's just a relationship that doesn't work, then, you know,
If it's a toxic relationship.
yeah,
But
then
yeah,
get out of that.
I
Yeah.
have to say too. So after this, she ends up going over to Will's house for this, like you said, this dinner with his daughter. And I was personally, I know she was supposed to be kind of a rebel and whatever. I was
Yeah.
totally team Beatrice. Like, yeah, I loved it when she was like, you seem nice. So I wonder if you know what kind of guy you're eating with. And he's just basically like, lady, you're dating a perv. And she actually said that. I was
About
like,
her
yeah,
dad.
I kind of agree. So
Yeah, like, you know, I think he's just, those are the relationships he's created with his wife and his daughter. And like, she's speaking her truth that ended up being Rebecca's truth with Will,
yeah,
because
I think so. I was like, yeah, I think maybe in another world, Beatrice and Rebecca would be friends. They hit it off
yeah.
really well. 'Cause,
And the thing about it is, it seemed like Rebecca was able to connect with most people. And I think she would see that she doesn't have a lot of friendships, but, you know, she was making these friendly relationships with the plumber, the mechanic, this guy, that, like Peter, like, she's able to make these really great connections. But for some reason, it's not happening with her stepdaughters, and maybe that's where she would expect it the most. And so
yeah.
then she might be turning, well, maybe things have been different with Will. Well, it would have been, but maybe it's not exactly better. It's
Well, and then it was really weird. So she invites Will to meet the family in this sort of just dinner for the grown-ups.
yeah,
And of course, you have Minfu with her baby, and she's
yep.
nursing the baby at the dinner table, which I am very free and open about. I'm a supporter.
Yeah. Well,
That's
yeah,
fine
like,
with me.
that was one of the weird things where I was like, folks, I don't think this is, she's
She's
in
just feeding her
her family
baby.
home. Get over it.
Right.
Baby needs to eat.
Right. And but like Patch was really upset. She's like, why aren't you inviting me? And then Rebecca's like, I am inviting you right now. I'm inviting all of you.
Yeah, Patch was upset, but it's like, girl, you have to wait for the phone call. Like, you can only call one person at a time. And
Right.
maybe email wasn't really popular yet then, because then you can just invite everyone at once.
Yeah. And she's kind of dismissive. I think his Patch is like, what is this, flight attendant casual? Sort of criticizing her
Oh
clothes.
yeah, I wrote that down too. It's like, everyone asks, what are you wearing? Like, they're all on her case about what she's wearing. Like, they had no concept that this woman has been a huge part of their life for years, and that their dad has passed away years ago. and that
Yeah.
she is still a human being who has interest in relationships, so that it's like, why would you ever wear anything different? Because she'd like to wear something different to go out on perhaps a date, or to go out to dinner, to a nice dinner. And there's nothing wrong with it. She doesn't have to wear an apron for everything. Like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. And, but then Will's even worse because she's like showing him photo albums and stuff like a normal human being would do. And, and he's like, now you've got me in here looking at years of toasts. And like,
Yeah.
that was rude. What is wrong with you? And so
Yeah.
she dumps him. He's gone. Thank goodness. And, and she talks to Zeb and he quotes George Eliot and he was the best. And then we finally get to Poppy's 100th birthday. And I did really like Poppy. I like Jack Palance. He was so cute.
Okay,
In the
question.
movie.
Did you notice I felt like his birthday sign said happy birthday Poopy, not Poppy?
I didn't notice that. I'll have to check.
I'll have to go back in YouTube and see if I can't get a screen grab. But I was like, don't you spell Poppy Poppp? I was all thrown off in the birthday party, I have to say.
Well, and also I should mention that the flashback sequences are the young Rebecca is played by Hilary Danner, Blythe Danner's niece. So that's
cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why she looked so much like her.
Yeah.
And so they show this little film strip thing of the life of Poppy and all these home movies and stuff, and she's never in the movies, and that does actually it doesn't necessarily ring true that she'd never be in the movies, but one thing that's definitely true in my family is that if you look back through family photos, so many of the pictures, my mom looks kind of exhausted, but when you think about it, she was putting on, they were taken at big family gatherings where my mom was probably cooking for 20 more people, once everybody gets there.
I don't remember if it was her or Zeb that was like, well, I was probably planning or, hosting or whatever.
So she feels kind of sad, like, oh, I don't even exist in this family. Like, I'm not even in any of the video. And so she's feeling kind of sad. And and then I think it's Zeb who says, yeah, your true life is the one you end up with, whatever it may be. You just do the best you can with what you got. And I think that's true.
I do think I like what he says there, but I also think like, what she's sort of going through is thinking about a decision-making process, like the decisions that she made. And I think she's questioning it. And it's like, but this is the life you're in. And that's, I think, what Zeb has said. And I think that's a really great quote. But we also do actively participate in our own lives. So we do make decisions along the way. And so the one thing I don't like about that quote is that there might be some inherent passiveness, like we just sit around and wait for life to happen. Life does happen, but we also are a player in that movie as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I do like the quote if you think about that she has been actively part of her life. Because I think like if we do want to change something, even if it's like, I want to walk more, I don't know, like we make those choices, right? It's not just like life is like all of a sudden we're walking, like we had to make that decision. And so I think
that's what's interesting too, is that so Nono complains to Barry, her husband, says about that she's only in this marriage for being useful, that you only married me to take care of your son, kind of a thing. And he says to her, he says, don't you think we partly love people for their usefulness? And I think there is some truth to that that the work that we do for each other is a sign of our love. And somebody like Nono probably wouldn't understand that because she takes everyone for granted in her life. And then you have, in the same scene, you have Minfu complaining about Hakeem and Patch going to a marriage counselor. And then this is when you find out that Troy is gay. Troy, it's like, oh my gosh. But yeah, you're right. I mean, because that's the thing with life, like it's a combination of you making your own choices and also how other people's choices impact your choices.
Exactly.
And you just kind of have to.
And I mean, there's also a lot of factors that impact your choices as well, because when Blythe Danner, when Rebecca and Joe got married, that is a different time than when these kids are getting married. And
Yeah.
so, for example, it's like, you know, if you get married and it's the 50s, that is different than getting married in the 2000s in terms of how
Yeah.
your role in the house and in the family impact decisions that you're being made. And so, but that can also carry over generationally. And it's like, but I mean, I think we would think less now of saying like, oh, we only got married for this person to take care of your son. I think that seems like, I mean, here's the thing, anything can happen, but I don't think that is the key influencing factor of marriage in 2004 or 2019, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could potentially be when you have a divorced parent in the 50s. But I think, though, in any flashback, Joe and Rebecca seem to be happy.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, these are questions that we have. Like, I think because we only get one life, we can't go to the past, we can't go to the future, unfortunately, that as we live life, we question a lot of things. And that's where we reflect, and that's where we either develop an understanding of that journey, gratefulness, or wanting to change, whatever it might be. Like, I think that's just a human, we all do it, right? And so I think, though, that No and some of the other kids might need to really go talk to a therapist or something.
I think so. But it was interesting because this was the part that really did kind of remind me of my grandma. So the end of the movie is Peter and Rebecca sitting down, and Peter's the only one that notices that she isn't in the video.
Yeah.
And he asks her about it. And she says, I guess I was just busy planning something. And that was, like I said, my grandma was always wanted to make things beautiful and cute and fun and make everybody and just, it's interesting because, you know, she was an affluent person as far as her situation.
Yeah.
But like at the funeral, everybody just had all of these experiences and memories.
Yeah.
And where for my grandfather, who was a hard person to love, a lot of the memories were kind of tied to something he had paid for so-and-so's school, or he'd been a blessing, and that's great and that's valuable. But I don't know, I just thought the real contrast between just the people felt such a closeness to my grandma and just felt like she was their advocate and their best friend. Like people, every single grandchild felt like they were the best grandchild to her and that we were her best friend, and she just had that gift. And I felt like this moment between Peter and Rebecca felt one of the most emotionally true moments, I think, of the movie.
Yeah. That, and I think the other scene with Peter and Rebecca, well, actually, there's 3 scenes in particular. The one that you're mentioning, the other one is when she has them over and they play Scrabble.
Yeah.
She's talking about, like, why am I even planning this 100th birthday party for Poppy's? Not even going to remember it later. And Peter says, because maybe he'll enjoy it while it's happening, even if he doesn't remember it later. And I was like, this kid is wiser than anyone else in the movie. And then the other scene is when he invites her to the grandparents' event, and she goes, and he has some like science project or something like that. And he's like, don't you want to go look at the other projects? And she's like, no, I'd like to stay here and admire this one. And he's so happy and proud that she's there and is so genuinely pleased with his project. And she goes back and tells Nana, he's brilliant. And she just complains, of course. But I feel like he knows in that moment that this person is 100% there for them and cares about what they're doing and appreciates it. And I don't think he's getting that from his dad or his stepmom.
Yeah.
So
the movie basically ends in a spot where I think that Rebecca's in a happy, content spot with her life. And hopefully she ends up marrying Zeb. Dream.
Can we get a sequel where it's just Rebecca and Zeb? Thank you.
Yes.
It only has to be a 1-minute update in between other movies, but we'd still appreciate it.
Yeah. So there we go. I think we basically covered the whole movie.
Yeah.
So back when we were grown-ups, it's interesting. It's a unique film, and so I'm glad I saw it. Like I said, it was kind of uneven, but yeah, it had its moments, and Black Dinner was great. So there you go. I'd probably give it 3 crowns out of 5.
Boy. Can I give it a lower score because I just didn't like some of the characters?
No, you're fine.
I'll go with 2.5 crowns.
Yeah, I get it.
Will, daughters, they all need to get it together.
Yeah.
Be reflective. Be grateful. Say thank you.
Yeah. Queen Beatrice. That's what
Rebecca and Zeb never changed.
Yeah, that's right. So there you go. If any of you listening have seen this movie, and it is available on Hallmark Movies Now, if you guys have the app, then you can watch it. It's also easily available other places. So if you have it, if you've seen it, let us know what you think. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, what are your different thoughts, and just some of the topics that we talked about. You don't even need to have seen the movie to kind of talk about. Yeah, if you're a step parent and you can relate to some of the things, that would be really interesting to share your thoughts in the comments or on Twitter. We'd love to hear
your experiences, because like neither of us are step parents.
No.
So.
And I never had a step parent growing up either, so I can't. But anyway, if you have any thoughts on what we talked about, then let us know. That would be great. And the current plan for next month for On Friendship is to cover we're going lighter and fluffier.
Ooh.
We're going to talk about A Country Wedding, which is all about your classic story of 2 friends who who are so close, and then one of them goes off and becomes a famous country music singer. So it happens all the time.
Yes. I wasn't sure where this is going, but I like the sound of it.
Yeah, it's really good. So there you go. We're going to talk about A Country Wedding next month. It's going to be great. And if you have any ideas for what we could talk about for On Friendship, let us know. We'd love to hear. And so, Lisa, where can people find you?
Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and bestforeverspod@gmail.com. I'm at elisalucas.com, but that website is still under construction, so don't mind the dust, so to speak.
Yes. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, on iTunes, Rotten Tomatoes, all over the place, on YouTube. And I have Family Movie Night that I have every Monday night. And so I'd love for y'all to check that out. And make sure you're following the podcast at Hallmarkies Pod, Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media on iTunes and YouTube. If you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate all of your support. And again, let us know your comments and thoughts. We really appreciate that. We have our Patreon group, which is so much fun. For $5 a month, you can be part of our special Facebook Patreon group. And thanks so much. And we'll talk to you all later. Bye. This podcast was brought to you by Hallmarkies for Hallmarkies. For more information about how you can leave your mark on Hallmarkies, visit hallmarkiespodcast.com. Link in the description.